So now we're going to look at our zipper pocket, our internal zipper pocket, and I have my zipper pocket facing panel, and on the wrong side I've adhered a non-woven fusible interfacing. Now you can do this with a woven fusible interfacing, but you get a much crisper pocket if you use a non-woven. This was a tip that was given to me by Trudy, who's one of my lovely testers, a long time ago. She said, try it, see. And I was like, don't know. But we've all got some of that sort of cheap non-woven stuff in our drawer. So I thought I'd give it a go, and she was right. So I do it every time now. So thank you, Trudy, for that one, because I wouldn't have come up with that on my own. And I've made the markings on the back of my panel as per the pattern. So I've drawn a line centrally from one end to the other, which is 1 inch away from either side, because this is a 2-inch wide panel. Then I've done another line 1/8 of an inch above and 1/8 of an inch below, and then I've made my marks in from the ends as per the pattern instructions. So I've given myself a rectangle. I've drawn roughly triangles at the end of each rectangle, but if I'm honest, I don't usually draw them. If you're new to adding a zipper pocket, then it's worth drawing them just to know that you've got them in the right place. So I'm going to take my lining panel, and this is the lining panel that I've already put my slip pocket on. I'm going to fold my zipper facing panel in half so I can find the center, so short ends together, and I'm going to lay it right sides together centrally so that the edge touches the top of my slip pocket. So you can see there that that is sitting centrally, because my fold is where the fold is on the slip pocket, and it's sitting just touching the top of my slip pocket. Now I'm going to stitch down the long sides of my rectangle, but I'm only stitching down the long sides. I'm not doing the short ends. I'm going to make sure that I'm very careful to drop my needle right into the corner of that rectangle. This will give us lovely angled corners on our zipper pocket aperture. So I'm just going to go a couple of stitches backwards just to secure my threads. And then I'm carefully going to go all the way down one long side of my rectangle, making sure that when I stop, and I'm slowing down to make sure that I don't overshoot it, I stop right on the furthest corner. And a couple of back stitches to secure my threads. And then I'm going to do the same on the bottom long line. And you can see there I raise my foot and drop my needle in. It's a lot easier to get that first stitch in if you just lower your foot by hand, lower your needle in by hand, so you know you've got it right on the corner of your rectangle. I apologise for any noises that you hear. I've got a husband working from home and 3 teenagers in the house who are likely to come asking for food, goodness knows what. So I apologise in advance if anybody comes in. I have put a sign on my door to say that I'm videoing, so I'm hoping that they'll stay out, but you never know. Food sometimes takes over. So I've sewn along the top and the bottom of my rectangle. Now I'm just going to fold that in half and make a little snip. Don't get too carried away and make a big one, because you're likely to go wonky and go through your stitching. And then I'm going to cut down that central line that I made till I get to the end of my triangle. When I get to the end of my triangle, and that's about 3/4 of an inch away from the very ends, I'm going to snip out towards my stitching, being very careful not to cut into my stitching and not to go outside of the rectangle. I'm going to do the same on the other side, at the other end. And you can see now, that's where those little triangles are, one at each end. You can just see them poking out there. I'm going to take my pressing mat. I'm just going to fold that facing over at the point where that stitching is, and just kind of give that little press down. And this helps when you're turning that facing through the zipper aperture that you've just made. You could do it with your fingernail. You could even do it with a little metal roller if you've got one. I use a metal roller when I'm doing this on, if I'm doing a pocket like this on faux leather. So you can see now that those two sides of that facing are kind of sitting upwards because they've been pressed upwards. I'm going to take the end of my zipper facing and I'm going to push it through the hole that I've made. So pushing it through, I'm going to do the same with the other end. And if you kind of get hold of the two ends on the back and give it a tug, the facing will come through to the wrong side of your work. Now we have a bit of fiddling to do. You need to roll the edges of this pocket aperture between your thumb and forefinger to make sure that the seam is sitting right on the side. You don't want any of the facing showing on the front. Now, if you are worried about whether you can get the facing right behind, then actually it's good to use the same fabric for your facing as you're using for your lining. So if you don't make it perfect, it's not going to show. If you think that you would like to make sure that it's actually right behind, then use a different coloured fabric, because then you'll be able to see from the front if anything is showing. Now, I do this slowly, bit by bit. So I'm pressing the top edge because I've rolled that between my fingers and it's sitting nicely. So why don't we sew the short ends? A lot of people say when they're making zipper apertures that they get a lot of wrinkles at the corners, and that, I believe, is because of you stitch the short ends. I don't get wrinkles because I don't stitch the short ends. There are other methods. People tell you to shorten your stitch length when you get to the corners before you go up those short ends. I just don't think it's necessary. If you don't need to stitch them, then why would you? So I'm just giving that a really good press so it makes sure that my zipper facing is completely behind my lining. And you can see that I have a beautifully rectangular aperture. There are no puckers on the corners. It's perfect. So I'm going to pop that out the way, and we're going to make our zipper pocket lining. Now, the zipper pocket lining for this bag has no exposed zipper tape, and it's something that I really feel quite strongly about, that if you're going to make a bag, you want the inside of your bag to look as good as the outside. And I know that very possibly you're the only person that's going to see it, but seeing exposed zipper tape inside of your bag just looks ugly. Now, first things first, I'm just going to press my zipper. Pressing your zipper will mean that you're much less likely to get a wavy zipper. We've all seen them, and it's not an attractive look. Pressing your zipper first does help. I'm just pressing the zipper tape on either side. And don't worry about pressing on a nylon zipper. This is a number 3 dress zipper. Nylon zippers can be pressed quite easily. If you're using a metal zipper, do be careful, because the zipper teeth get very hot and you will get 3rd-degree burns from them if you're not careful. You have been warned. So I have my 2 zipper pocket lining panels. Both have been interfaced. Some patterns will tell you not to interface your zipper pockets. Again, like all pockets, you stuff a lot into your zipper pocket, and if it's not interfaced, whatever you put in there is going to push through the fabric eventually. I don't want my pockets to fail before my bag does. So I'm going to take one of my lining panels, lay it right side up on the table, and I'm going to take my zipper and I'm going to lay that right side up on the table also. Now, if you're using zipper by the yard, you can make it a bit longer. I only had this zipper in the right colour, and unfortunately it's not quite long enough, but I'm going to live with it because I'm going to keep this bag. Now, you can clip it in place if you want to, but I'm going to stitch this in place using a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. I don't very often pin my zippers. A scant 1/4 of an inch seam allowance is just less than 1/4 of an inch. So that's my zipper secured onto the front of my zipper pocket lining, and you can see that's just secured at the top. I'm going to take my second lining panel and lay it right side up. I'm going to give that a press though because it's got a bit of a lump in it. This interfacing is nice and stiff, but it doesn't adhere quite as well as the branded products. This is a sort of a generic, almost like a kind of a cotton buckram, and it's nice. It's just a bit more challenging to work with. So I'm going to lay that second panel right side up on my table. I'm going to take the first one that I've done, that I've already stitched my zipper to. I'm going to pull the zipper out from the top, and I'm going to lay the zipper right sides up onto this panel too. And what you must make sure is that the lining panels match at the sides. Obviously the bottoms won't match. You can see there, one's longer than the other, that's fine. But make sure that the sides match up. Again, you can pin it if you want to. I'm not going to. And you're going to stitch that in place using a scant 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Just a couple of back stitches at the beginning to secure my threads. And now you can see we have the zipper fully fitted between the two lining panels. So I'm now going to take my ironing pad again, and with my zipper pocket lining panels wrong side up, I'm just going to open those seam allowances with my fingers. In fact, I'm going to do it from this end because it's a lot easier. And I'm going to press that seam allowance open. Oops, I've just pressed it closed again. And I like to press on both sides of the pocket, because sometimes, I'll show you in a second, it's easier to show you than it is to try and explain it. Because this is quite a stiff interfacing, it's not that good at opening up, but you can see there that it's actually I've opened the seam allowances. I'm going to turn it over because sometimes you get kind of a little pucker here, which is just, actually I haven't on this particular instance, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm just going to press this side because I think this is the inside of your pocket, so this is the bit that you're going to actually see when you look into your pocket. And there we are, that's all done. Now, if you're right-handed, you need to lay your zipper pocket lining panels wrong, with the lining panels wrong side up, but the zipper pull is facing you at the top here. You need to lay it so that your zipper pull closes to the left if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed, you want it the other way around so that your zipper pull closes to the right. Now, because my zipper is quite small, quite short, I'm just going to stitch across the ends here to make sure that it doesn't open up as I'm stitching this, because I'm going to stitch with I'm not going to stitch with the zipper pocket open. I am going to be moving the zipper pull along, and I don't want those end bits to kind of splay open, so I've literally just put a couple of stitches just to secure the ends of my zipper. So I'm right-handed, so I'm laying my panel so that my zipper will close to the left. I'm then going to take my lining panel that we made our beautiful aperture in, and I'm going to carefully lay it over the top of my zipper. And what I want to do is try and get that nice and central. Actually moving mine a little bit offset because I've got a metal stopper on that zipper and I don't want that to show. Now, if you want to pin it, you can do. Some people like to put double-sided tape. I don't like to do either. I am, however, going to change my foot because I can't stitch my zipper with that great big foot on. Let's just put that one there and hunt down my this is what happens when you've got just too many feet. That's what I'm looking for. So let's pop my narrow foot on. And because my machine, although my machine is not an industrial, it's a high shank machine, so it takes industrial feet, which is a real bonus. So you can either pop a little bit of glue on either side of your zipper before you position it if you're worried about it moving, or you can use a bit of double-sided tape. I don't like double-sided tape. Or you can pin through your fabrics into your lining fabrics. And you can see the lining of the pocket is sitting out at the top there, and that's fine. That's exactly as it should be. But you need your zipper teeth to sit centrally within that aperture. And once you're happy that they're sitting centrally within that aperture, make sure you've got long threads at the beginning and the end, because we're going to bury our threads. And you're going to top stitch around the outside of this zipper aperture to secure the zipper in place using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I've left long threads at the beginning on the top and the bottom, which I will pull through to the back of my work. So we've gone along the top. I'm just going to hand crank down the end here. Your needle should slip easily between the teeth of your zipper, unless you're using a metal zipper, in which case you've got a couple of options. You can either hand crank and wiggle it so that you can get through the metal teeth, or before you fit it, you remove some of the teeth that are outside of the zipper aperture. I don't very often use real metal teeth because I just find them a bit of a faff, and they're also quite expensive. So we're coming back along the bottom. As I get up here towards the zipper pull, I'm just going to stop with my needle down, raise my foot and move my zipper pull out of the way so it's not in my line of stitching. There's nothing quite as infuriating as hitting your zipper pull with your foot and getting along a wonky line of stitching. So I'm then going to come up this end, at this short end. And what I want to try and do is land in the same stitch hole as I started. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Today is a good day. And then I'm going to trim off my threads. I'm going to take the threads from the front, so the 2 threads on the front from where I started and where I finished, and I'm going to pop them straight through that last hole to the reverse of my work, so on the wrong side. So I'm kind of inside of my pocket now, and I have the 2 threads from underneath, so they were the threads from the bobbin. I'm going to tie them off. And then I'm going to and you can see there we have a beautifully rectangular aperture, and there's no obvious start or finish to my stitching, and our pocket is beautiful. We've still got this piece of lining sitting up at the back, so I'm going to turn my work over and I'm going to pull that top lining down over the bottom lining. And you'll notice that one is longer than the other, and that's absolutely fine. We're going to trim off that little bit at the bottom. Now, if you're really conscious of wasting fabric, you can actually cut your first piece of pocket lining half an inch shorter, and then they'll match. But then remembering which one is the one that you need to put on first, it's a nightmare. This is half an inch of fabric. It's not the end of the world. I'm going to take my pressing mat again. I'm just going to change my foot though, because I don't like doing the rest of it with my narrow foot. Narrow feet are fine for what they're meant for, but not for general sewing, I find. So I have my 2 pocket lining pieces on the back of my work, and I'm just going to make a 1/4 inch fold at the bottom of both of the lining panels, and I'm folding to the wrong side on both panels, and I'm not measuring. This is really done by eye. This will help when you finish your pocket once you've turned your bag. So you can see I've done one, and I'm going to turn the one underneath again to the wrong side, so that the 2 panels are the same length. And again, I'm literally eyeballing it. I just kind of finger press it in place and then press it with the iron. It's a lot easier when you're not using such thick interfacing. So I'm just going to pull that one out of the way. And my 2 pocket linings should be more or less the same length, and that's not bad. They're not bad. So I'm going to turn my work over so it's right sides up. I'm going to pull the side out of the way, and you can see there we've got the pocket linings and the facing and the end of my zipper all showing. And I'm going to stitch down the side here. I'm going to go through the facing, the end of the zipper, and all the way down the side, making sure I don't unravel those folds that I've made. Again, if you're worried about the seam allowance, check the pattern. So just want to make sure that those folds that we put in stay as they are. So you could use an awl. I've literally got hold of my seam ripper, so I'm going to use that in place of an awl. I just want to make sure that those folds that I put in stay in. And then I'm going to trim off any excess fabric. I'm just going to take it down to about 1/8 of an inch. If you've got extra zipper tape, then you can take it down to the same measurement. I'm going to turn my panel round. I'm going to open up this side, and the same thing again. I'm going to stitch down across my face. Well, I'm going to stitch from the bottom upwards, but making sure that those pocket linings stay together, those folds stay open, and up across my zipper facing panel. And again, I'm going to use the point on my seam ripper just to make sure that stays where it's meant to be. Again, I'm trimming off any excess zipper, lining, facing panel from the edge. And there we have one beautifully fitted zipper pocket. You can see there though, there's a hole in the bottom. Now, I'm going to tell you now, because I think it's a good thing to get into the habit of doing. Open your zipper, open this pocket. Open the zipper in the lining now. It means you won't have to remember it later. Just leave it open. It's fine. We're going to go on to constructing the lining next.